Peace, peace, peace. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know, it's your boy Vic Slain Hope, and I have another video for y'all. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about stop and frisk, right? And the question that I'm posing to the viewer is, does stop and frisk really work, right? And I have like some research here that was conducted by the Vera Institute, a few years prior when stop and frisk was a big thing in New York City. Now, the reason for this video is because there's been a lot of talks surrounding stop and frisk because the new mayor plans to implement it back again in New York City, even though it was ruled unconstitutional, I believe, in 2013, right? But there's a lot of concerns surrounding high levels of crime in New York City. So this is part of the conversation that we're going to be having today. And I plan to answer the question that I asked y'all. So based on this research that says the effects of stop and frisk, right? This is like the title. It's saying that based on the research, the NYPD and the use of stop and frisk has damaged some communities' trust in the police, according to a new study that many young people won't report, violent crimes. Meaning that like the stop and frisk, when it was happening back then, it ruined the relationship between the community and the police to the point because they was harassing people. They was over policing. So it got to the point that it got so bad where people don't even want to talk to them. People didn't even want to call them even when they were in danger. So this is one of the adverse effects that it caused back then, about like 8 years ago, right? Another thing that it says, the Vera Institute of Justice conducted a survey of 500 men and women ages 18 to 25 who had been stopped by the police at least once in 5 highly patrolled neighborhoods in New York City, right? And it says 45% of those that took the survey encountered an officer who threatened them. 45%, right? It says, and 46% said that they had experienced physical force, meaning that the police was, violent. It says 25% said they've been involved in a stop in which a cop drew a weapon. An alarming 44% said that they had been stopped repeatedly by officers, some more than 20 times. Only 29% of the respondents said that they've been informed of the reason for being stopped. So based on that excerpt, it's like, they was basically violating, right? In some cases, they even draw their weapons. And only 29% of the respondents said that they were informed, meaning the police was just stopping people and not even telling them or letting them know why they were stopping them, right? There was no probable cause, no reasoning, because they're not even telling them, even if there was, right? Another thing it says, in 2012, the NYPD stopped 533,042 people, 87% of whom were black or Latino. Many critics believe that the policy have accused it of being racially discriminatory. So, yes, I can agree how that could look that way, but let's be real. In New York City, there is not a lot of poor white neighborhoods in New York City. New York City is the 5 boroughs. So a lot of times, that's not something that is taken into consideration when we're talking about the population of jail in New York City, right? Because, again, crime is usually connected to socioeconomic conditions. And a lot of black and Latino people live in impoverished condition in ghettos in New York City. And because you don't have a lot of white people living in these ghettos, of course you're not going to have a large influx of poor whites fueling the jail system. But when you go to other places, other states, you do see large populations of white poor folks fueling the social justice system, right? So I just wanted to throw that in there because I'm fair, I'm not biased, right? Let's continue. Overwhelmingly, no illegal items were discovered as a result of stop and frisk. Almost 90% of those stopped weren't arrested or issued a summons to appear in court. So what does this tell us? When stop and frisk was at its height, 8 years ago, right? There really wasn't recovering much items. They wasn't really taking guns off the streets, right? And so if no guns was really taken off the streets, and almost 90% of the people that they stopped weren't arrested or issued a summons to appear in court, I'm letting y'all do the math. Out of 500,000 people that they stopped. And in 2011, they reportedly said that this is the highest number that they stopped, and it was about 600,000 people. So if the percentage is not adding up, if the math is not adding up, if almost 90%, so we're going to say like 80-something percent, 80-something percent of those stopped were not arrested or issued summons, right? And No illegal items overwhelmingly. So the number, and you could look this up too, right? You could look up more stats to see the ratio of how many guns were removed to the ratio of how many people were not locked up, how many people didn't have nothing illegal on them, how many people wasn't really breaking our laws. You can do your own research, right? So it says all of these factors contribute to the lack of young people's trust in New York's finest, meaning the police. Our main finding is pretty plain and simple. Stop and frisk is compromising the trust needed for public safety, right? And this is a lead researcher that said this, Jennifer Fratello. It says, Adhil Polanco, a police officer in 2005, since 2005, says stop and frisk will never work. There's a lot of things that could be making the community safer, Polanco says. But stopping and harassing innocent people is not going to make the community safer. Being a cop was Polanco's dream growing up, but things changed once he got on the job. His turning point came when he was forced to handcuff an innocent 13-year-old just walking home from school. It's really a humiliating feeling, said Polanco, of the stop and frisk, which the Dominican Republic native has experienced. When they go through your pockets, when they stop you, you don't have no freedom. However, Bill Bratton, which was the police commissioner back then, he said New York's new police chief doesn't think ending stop and frisk is the answer to is the answer. Stop, question, and frisk is a basic tool of policing, right? Same rhetoric that this new mayor is using. Stop, question, frisk. Is a basic tool of policing. It's the overuse that created the negative reaction and the confusion about whether the police can with or without it. Can police with or without it. You cannot police without it. I'm sorry. So this is what the old commissioner said, right? And obviously, if these things are not contributing to safer communities, because if you look at the crime was still relatively high. Not high, but it was still higher than in 2019, right? In 2019, there was reportedly about 300 homicides, 319, I believe, in New York City. There was no stop and frisk going on, right? So, yes, in 2020, it went up to 468. But what happened in 2020? The pandemic, right? People didn't go to work. People, was receiving a stimulus. But again, it's connected. Crime is connected to socio-economic conditions. In the 1990s, crime was down at an all-time low in New York City, right? Well, it went down from how high it was. And a lot of people were trying to figure out why that was. And the reason is because the economic boom of the 90s, right? But also in the 90s, there was still a problem. Because in 1999, it says Black and Latinos made 50% of the New York City population, yet they made 84% of the police stops. Again, like I said, and at that time, it's 50%, right? If there was 50% of the New York City population, that's a whole totally different thing. I don't know how much is Black and Latino people of the population today. But anyway, it says Bratton's solution is to reduce the number of stop and frisk. Others argue that police should wear cameras while performing stops, blah, 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 just to show the evidence. Some also suggest that police officers should be retrained on how to behave towards the public. So these are some of the things that have happened, right? Police officers have cameras now. I don't know if they have been retrained. But these are some of the solutions that they kind of like try to offer to kind of like help fix the problem. Now, based on this information, right, if we're going just based on this, and there's numerous other studies out there, then we would say that stop and frisk didn't really work, right? It hasn't really worked because, again, when you look at the years from 2003 to 2010, to 2013, they was doing this, right? And the number, it wasn't a drastic number of them taking guns off the streets. It wasn't a drastic number of them locking people up for felonies. Trust me, I was out there around this time, running around, getting crazy, right? And even though the police used to stop us and they used to harass us and they used to do some of those things, we still got by. We still was able to maneuver. So it wasn't like they was just catching people. It wasn't like the police still be doing a bad job. So I just think they're trying to make their job, this is just me, they're trying to make their job easier by just being able to just profile people and pull them over and harass them and do all of these things, right? Because in reality, the police don't really be doing their job. This is why a lot of times they rely on informants, they rely on snitches heavily, because they don't really be doing a lot of their job. If the police was really doing a lot of their job, then you wouldn't really need informants. You wouldn't really need people to cooperate and help you solve crime if you were really doing your job. So with that being said, I just feel like the police be trying to make their job easier by just doing that. And I get it, because at the end of the day, we all want safety. But I think some of the solutions, like it was explained in another research that I've seen about the 1990s. I just think that the economy is in a bad place right now, which is contributing and leading to, like, a lot of robberies, a lot of shooting, a lot of crime, a lot of things is happening because in connection to COVID and how that has affected the economy. So I think if we're really trying to fix the issue, I think that the economy is the main thing, right? We need to figure out, like, how to help people get some money, because once you help people get legal money, then they're less likely to be doing certain things. I think improving community relations with police, I think, is another step. I think one of the ways that could work is, like, when police see other wicked cops violating and doing certain things that they're not supposed to be doing, check them. Because if people see you correcting police, but of course this might not happen, but hey, we got to be optimistic, right? If people see good police, quote unquote, checking bad police, then it kind of creates some type of level of, like, I may be able to count on you in some way because you're checking your crooked ass partner, which I don't think is ever going to happen, right? Because the blue wall of silence, and they stick together, and police believe in no snitching too, right? And holding each other down, because they're a gang too. So anyway, with that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Did I answer the question? Do y'all still feel like we need it? What are some alternatives to stop and frisk? Let me know in the comment section what are y'all thoughts. I'm interested in knowing. Y'all have a good one. Peace.